Hello students, you're welcome to our class this morning. The topic we're considering this morning is classification and variation. Here are the objectives of the lesson. At the end of this lesson, students should be able to name the main groups of living things, identify examples of organisms in the various kingdoms and state their characteristics, explain the meaning of the term variation, identify the causes of variation. We all know that living things are those organisms that have life in them and they are able to display some characteristics such as movement, respiration, nutrition, growth, excretion, adaptation, etc. Basically, living things are put into groups so that they can be studied more easily. Grouping things in this way is called classification. The largest groups in the classification system for living things are called kingdoms. Each kingdom contains a large number of living organisms that all have a few major features in common. So here is the hierarchy of classification of living things. Living things with a few major features in common are grouped together in a kingdom. Then phylum, class, order, family, genus, and then species. So as you go down from kingdom to species, the similarities between organisms tend to increase while the differences tend to decrease. So you can pick an organism, it could be a plant or an animal, and try to classify the organism using the hierarchy of classification of living things listed on this slide. The 5 kingdoms of living organisms. Living things are grouped into 5 major kingdoms, namely Kingdom Monera, Kingdom Protista, Kingdom Fungi, Kingdom Animalia, and Kingdom Plantae. From your earlier years in the study of science, you are meant to believe that a living thing is either a plant or an animal. But there are organisms that are neither plants nor animals, and that's why living things are now classified into 5 main kingdoms. In the Kingdom Monera, you have examples of organisms such as bacteria. In the Kingdom Protista, you have organisms like amoeba, paramecium, and plasmodium. In the Kingdom Fungi, you have organisms like mushroom, like molds, and yeast. While the Kingdom Animalia is a kingdom that we are all familiar with. It includes all animals. Then the Kingdom Plantae includes all plants. For the purpose of this lesson, we're going to focus on Kingdom Animalia and then Kingdom Plantae. The reason being that last time, while we're looking at the topic microorganisms, there we were able to look at Kingdom Monera, that's bacteria, Kingdom Protista, and then Kingdom Fungi. Dividing up the animal kingdom. The animal kingdom is divided into 2 main groups. The invertebrates, which are animals without a backbone, and vertebrates, which are animals with a backbone and an internal skeleton. Groups of invertebrates. The main subgroups in the invertebrate group are the annelid worm, the nematode worms, the arthropods, and mollusks. Annelids have long, thin, soft bodies divided into segments or rings. Examples include earthworm and leech. Nematodes have thin, cylindrical bodies that are divided into segments. An example is the roundworm. Other examples include hookworm and whipworm. Arthropods have a skeleton on the outside of their body and jointed legs. These are the largest group of invertebrates. There are four major subgroups of arthropods called classes. The first class of arthropods are the myriapods. They have one pair of antennae and long cylindrical flat bodies with many legs. The centipedes and millipedes are in this group. Crustaceans like the lobster and crabs have two pairs of antennae. Arachnids do not have antennae or wings, but do have four pairs of legs. Spiders, mites, ticks, and scorpions belong to the class of arthropod known as arachnids. Insects. Insects have one pair of antennae, three pairs of legs, and up to four pairs of wings. About 70% of all known species of animals are insects. Examples of insects include mosquito, cockroach, butterfly, grasshopper, and locust. The last subgroup of invertebrates we're looking at is mollusks. Mollusks are soft-bodied animals which mostly have a shell to protect their body. Examples of mollusks include snail, slug, octopus, and squids. Vertebrates. In the vertebrate group, there are five major classes. There are fish or pisces, amphibians, which are animals that live both on land and in water like frogs and toads, reptiles like lizards and snakes, aves or birds like eagle and vulture, and mammals like man, lion, antelopes, etc. Each class of the vertebrate phylum is divided into smaller groups called orders. The members of each order have so many features in common that they look alike and are easy to group. An order is made up of smaller groups called families. The members of the different families look similar, but there exist some differences. The members of a family also have differences among them and can be split up into smaller groups called general or genus. The differences between members of each genus are found by looking very closely. Members of a genus which share a large number of similarities and can interbreed are placed in a separate group called species. The plant kingdom. The plant kingdom is divided into five groups, namely the algae, liverworts and mosses, ferns, conifers, and flowering plants. Algae are very simple plants. They do not have roots, stems, or leaves, but they do contain green pigment called chlorophyll, which is a characteristic of all plants. An example of the algae is the seaweed. Liverworts and mosses are small plants that do not have true roots, stems, or leaves. They grow in damp places near streams and ponds. Mosses have stems and leaves, but they do not have proper roots. Ferns have true roots and stems and reproduce by making spores. Spores are the vegetative cells of certain organisms, including ferns. Conifers. A conifer has roots, a woody stem, and needle-like leaves. Most conifers lose and replace their leaves all year round, so they are also called evergreen plants. Flowering plants has roots, stems, and leaves. In some plants, the stem is woody. All flowering plants reproduce by flowering and making seeds. I hope you'll be able to identify the five groups of plants we discussed from these diagrams. We have algae, liverworts and mosses, ferns, conifers, and flowering plants. Variation. Many living things have certain features in common. For example, a cat, a monkey, and a rabbit all have ears and a tail. However, these features vary from one kind of animal to the next. These variations in features are used to separate living things into groups and form a classification system. So basically, variation refers to the noticeable changes that occurs between organisms of the same species. Here you have human beings of different races. Though they belong to the same human race or human species, but there are noticeable variation as you move from one race to the other. The individuals in a species are not identical. Each one differs from all the others in many small ways. For example, one person may have a dark hair, blue eyes and ears with lobes, while another person may have fair hair, brown eyes and ears without lobes. The major causes of variation in a population are genetic differences and the influence of the environment. Genetic differences are concerned with those traits that are inherited from parents. When parents bear children, each child inherits some characteristics of the father and some of the mother. It should be noted that no two children, except in the case of identical twins, inherit exactly the same combination of characteristics from both parents. The reason being that identical twins are formed from the same egg and the same sperm. Number two cause of variation is influence of the environment. The environment can affect features of a living organism. For example, if some seedlings of a plant are grown in the dark and some in the light, they will have different features. Those grown in the dark will be tall, spindly, and have yellow leaves, while those grown in the light will have shorter, firmer stems with larger leaves that are green. So in summary, we've been able to look at the meaning of classifying living things and the major groups of living things. We mentioned the 5 kingdoms into which living things are classified: Kingdom Monera, Kingdom Protista, Kingdom Fungi, Kingdom Animalia, and Kingdom Plantae. For the sake of this lesson, we focused more on the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom. In the animal kingdom, we said that they are divided into 2 groups. We have vertebrates and invertebrates. We've looked at invertebrate group first, where we looked at the major invertebrate subgroups like the annelid worms, the nematode worms, the arthropods, which include classes such as the myriapods, the insect, crustacean, and arachnids. And lastly, we looked at mollusks as a subgroup in the invertebrate phylum. In the vertebrate phylum, we said that they're classified into 5 major classes. We have the fishes or pisces, we have amphibians, we have reptiles, we have aves or birds, and then we have mammals. Then we moved on to look at the plant kingdom. We said there are 5 major classes of plants or groups of plants in the plant kingdom. We have algae, liverworts and mosses, ferns, conifers, and flowering plants. Then we looked at variation as the differences that exist between organisms of the same species, and we said that the 2 major causes of variation are genetic differences and influence of the environment. Thank you very much for your time. That will be all. See you all in the next class. Remain blessed and God bless you all. Bye.